Gwen Stacy is dead and the Green Goblin hovers above Spider-Man and mocks him, telling Spidey that he'll be next to die. But Spider-Man is angry and out for revenge, and he leaps up at the Goblin to attack, wrapping his legs around the Goblin's neck and ready to kill the villain. The Goblin is able to fly into the bridge to knock our hero off, and as Spider-Man saves himself, the Goblin escapes. Before Spider-Man can chase after the Green Goblin, he spots the police start to gather around Gwen's body. He swings down and tells them all to back up, to stay away from her. And while some rookie cop thinks that this is a sign that he killed her, an older cop sees the truth. This is a man in pain. Spider-Man holds on to Gwen as he remembers his time with her and how his alter ego kept them apart. And when the cops move in to arrest Spider-Man, he knocks them down and swings away as they shoot at him. Mad and ill and grieving, Spider-Man visits the home of Norman Osborn as Peter Parker, but only finds Harry Osborn delirious from his drug trip. Harry begs Peter to stay with him, to just be his friend and stay. But Peter leaves Harry crawling on the stairs and walks out of the mansion looking for revenge. His next stop is the Daily Bugle, where Robbie Robertson believes him that he didn't kill Gwen and helps him look up addresses that belong to Norman Osborn, finding a warehouse where Norman was recently spotted. Jonah doesn't believe him though and thinks that he killed Gwen, but Spider-Man webs his mouth shut when he comes into the office yelling and screaming. Elsewhere, the Green Goblin prepares for Spider-Man's arrival, building himself new weapons, but he's not really prepared for how angry Spider-Man is. It's not really a fight. Spider-Man dodges everything the villain can throw at him and fires back with punches, hard and fast, yelling at the Goblin that he took her away. But before he finishes the Goblin off, before he kills the Goblin, Spider-Man catches himself. What is he doing? If he kills the Goblin, he becomes just like him, a murderer. He's so lost in thought that he doesn't notice the Goblin glider remotely activated until his spider sense screams at him about danger and he ducks, avoiding the glider but watching as it slams into the Green Goblin. Impaled on the wall, the Green Goblin dies, crucified not on a cross of gold, but on a stake of humble tin. And Spider-Man thought it would mean more, that it would make him feel better about Gwen, but the Goblin's death just makes him feel empty and a little more alone. And so he leaves, not noticing a mysterious figure cloaked by shadow. When he returns to his apartment, Peter finds Mary Jane waiting for him. She'd heard the news about Gwen and she's torn up about it, but Peter responds to her with anger. Mary Jane wouldn't care if her own mother had died, so why should she care about straights like Peter and Gwen? He tells her to leave, to not let something like Gwen dying spoil her fun. But Mary Jane doesn't leave. She walks to the door, and instead of walking through it, she gently closes it to stay with Peter. Spider-Man has a time bomb under his arm and a helicopter ride into the Himalayas, where he's hoping to recruit the help of the Inhumans. As he approaches the Inhuman city, hidden away, he's shot at by a beam and caught by Karnak. When Black Bolt, the leader of the Inhumans, arrives, Spider-Man recaps the last two issues, explains the time bombs and how they have a similar energy to the field protecting the Inhumans, and then asks for help to get back to the future. And the Inhumans agree to help and agree to accompany our hero. Maximus, brother of Black Bolt, builds a device that will send Spider-Man and the Inhumans into the future. And they arrive back in time before Spider-Man left, in time to see Zarko the Tomorrow Man head into Kang's base, ready to betray them. Before they can follow him, they're attacked by guards. Black Bolt flies up and knocks guards from their hoverbikes. Gorgon smashes the ground underneath their feet. Karnak can find the weakness in anything, and so he finds all of the guards' weaknesses, and Spidey just webs them up. They're then able to make it inside, just as Kang turns the tables on Zarko. And when we saw him look shocked last issue, it was because he was seeing Spider-Man walk through the door with a bunch of new friends. Kang threatens to kill all of the Avengers, but when he goes to activate the switch, Spider-Man webs up his hands, and Black Bolt utters a single word, sending the villain flying and smashing the containers that hold the Earth's mightiest heroes. After also webbing up Zarko into a ball, the heroes unmask Kang to find that he was a robot all along. But they still saved the day, and they use Maximus's time device to return to the present and back to New York. And Spider-Man swings away as the Avengers thank him for the rescue. Norman Osborn is dead, and J. Jonah Jameson blames Spider-Man, because of course he does. The pumpkin bombs found in the area must have been planted to draw attention away from the web crawler. As Robbie discusses the case with a cop and talks about how the body was mysteriously moved, a figure on the rooftops confirms in his thoughts that it was he who moved the body and changed Norman out of his Goblin costume. And Jonah reads a newspaper on the ride back to the Bugle about a man called Luke Cage, a hero for hire, and Jonah gets an idea. 3 days later, and a funeral is being held for Gwen Stacy. Aunt May is distraught that old folk like her get to live while the young die, and she walks away, tailed by Doc Ock's guard. Flash Thompson offers his kind thoughts to Peter, and eventually the crowds leave, until 3 people remain: Peter, Mary Jane, and Robbie Robertson. Robbie says that Jonah sends his condolences, but he couldn't make it to the funeral, and Peter lashes out. Jonah never cared about Gwen when she was alive, so why should he care now? And later, when MJ asks why he's so bitter, he explains to her that he's not bitter, he's just lost, that he doesn't know what his life is like now without Gwen. Meanwhile and elsewhere, J. Jonah Jameson visits Luke Cage, who is in the middle of throwing someone out of his office. Despite Luke saying that he doesn't work on Saturdays, a wad of cash in his face changes his mind, and Jonah hires Luke Cage to capture Spider-Man for $5,000 and bring him to Jonah, dead or alive. And so, as Spider-Man is swinging through the city, looking for whoever changed Norman out of his costume and thinking about quitting the superhero game, he's ambushed by Luke Cage. The two exchange punch after punch, throwing each other around but not doing much damage, as Spider-Man mocks Luke Cage for being a mercenary, for only doing this for the money. Eventually, Spidey smashes Cage through a skylight, tells him that he's not in the mood to play, and swings away. Back as Peter Parker, he goes home, thinking about how lonely and out of place he feels. He finds Harry at home, but when Peter asks Harry why he's there, Harry doesn't reply. When Peter asks if he can get anything for his friend, Harry doesn't reply. He just keeps ignoring Peter, and so Peter storms out. That evening, he's taken out to a concert by MJ, who wants to get him out of himself. But the concert is interrupted by Luke Cage smashing through the door and calling Spider-Man out, hoping that the hero is here to hear his words. And Spider-Man is, and he swings in with a punch. But Spider-Man also realizes as they're fighting that they're too evenly matched, that this fight won't really end, and so he webs Luke Cage up and talks to him instead, apologizes for the jibes about the money, and explains his side of the story. And so, as Peter catches back up with MJ, explaining that he found someone to talk to, Luke Cage goes to the Bugle and returns Jonah's money. He couldn't take the job after all. Luke Cage is fighting Spider-Man on the rooftops, the scene from Amazing Spider-Man, and watching him as a secretary from a car company who was skipping lunch to watch the hero. When she returns to her office, she bumps into Chemistro, a villain who vows to destroy the company, and he uses his gun to turn the stone on the ground underneath her into glass, and the woman falls through. After Luke Cage later turns down Jonah's job, also seen in Amazing Spider-Man, he's hired by the owner of the car company, who wants the man who did this to his secretary brought to justice, and he wants his company protected. But he's not telling the whole truth. Meanwhile and elsewhere, we learn the origin of Chemistro. He was a man named Curtis Carr who worked at the car company until he did some personal experiments to create his signature gun that he can change materials into other materials. But when he refused to give the invention to his company, they fired him, and now he's going to take the company down. However, elsewhere, Luke Cage is learning that the material that Chemistro makes is unstable and will turn to dust very easily. Elsewhere again, and we learn in a board meeting that the company that hired Luke Cage is hiding the fact that they know Chemistro's identity. But Chemistro has been hiding in that board meeting, hiding inside of a statue, and he bursts out to attack the board members. Luckily, Luke Cage is nearby and listening in, and he smashes into the room to help. He misses his first punch, and when Chemistro tries to shoot him, Luke Cage moves a table in the way, which becomes rubber thanks to the gun, and then is used by Cage to blind the villain, long enough for Cage to punch him down. In the ensuing struggle, Chemistro is able to shoot the floor below them, turning it to paper and sending Cage falling. Then, Chemistro turns a doorway to phosphorus, letting it burn and block the way as he escapes. Over the next few days, Luke Cage gets an apology from the car company for hiding the information about Chemistro's identity, and he also gets blackmailed, but that's not important to this story, and so Luke Cage is around when the company is testing prototype cars. When one of the cars is shot by the gun and bursts into flames, we learn that Luke Cage was the driver of the car. As he climbs out and chases Chemistro down, he tackles the villain, who then uses his own gun to shoot himself in the foot, literally turning his foot into steel to kick Luke Cage with. But the steel foot is unstable and instantly turns to dust, with Chemistro falling to the ground, unwilling to fight anymore. Look at what he lost just trying to keep hold of a gun. Hoping to get his mind off Gwen and to get out of New York, Peter Parker has taken a job in San Francisco to photograph Daredevil and Black Widow, but he is instantly attacked on the Golden Gate Bridge by a werewolf who seems to have come out of nowhere. The werewolf knocks Spidey from the top of the bridge, but our hero is able to web up a net to save himself. Then he dodges some swipes of the creature's claws and knocks the Wolfman down, and then dodges out of the way as the werewolf leaps at him and his assailant falls from the bridge and into the water. As he scans the water for signs of life, Spider-Man doesn't notice a mysterious face emerge from the mist behind him and then disappear again. Confused about the whole attack, and now Peter Parker again, Peter goes to a cafe to order lunch. He finds the waitress weirdly cold, and then he notices that everyone in the cafe is acting the same. When the werewolf smashes into the cafe to kill Peter, everyone just keeps on acting as if everything is normal. Peter is able to lure the werewolf to take another dive at him, and then dodges so that the werewolf crashes into a car instead and knocks the wolf out. And inside the cafe, the zombified people start to leave, all walking in a daze in one direction. But before Spider-Man can follow them, the werewolf turns back into a human called Jack. Jack explains how he, his best friend and his sister went to see a cheap magician called Moondark. While the tricks were terrible, Moondark cast some kind of spell over everyone in the audience, and with Jack in particular, he turned him into his werewolf persona, despite there being no full moon. Moondark wanted Jack to stop Spider-Man, who he assumed was coming to thwart his plan, and so he sent Jack through some mist that magically teleported him to the Golden Gate Bridge, where the first fight took place. Spidey and Jack team up and go looking for Moondark, but when they arrive, the proximity to the villain turns Jack back into a werewolf, which means that he's back to attacking Spider-Man again. Spidey is able to dodge just long enough to figure out that he needs to break the connection between the magician and the wolf. So he leaps at Moondark, and they both tumble through the mist and out at the Golden Gate Bridge. Spidey reaches out to save the magician, but misses, and the villain plunges into the water and doesn't come out. But in Moondark's base, Jack is human once more, and his sister and his friend are back to normal. Now, Peter just needs to get on with that photography assignment. Peter Parker is still in San Francisco to photograph and interview Daredevil and Black Widow. As he waits in the trees, his two subjects arrive at their mansion, holding some secret papers that Daredevil has been entrusted to keep safe. Once they're inside, Spidey changes into Peter Parker and introduces himself, but his planned interview is interrupted when his spider sense goes off and a villain smashes into the building. The villain is Ramrod, and he's looking for the papers that Daredevil has hidden away. He also seems to just know where they are. Daredevil and Black Widow are ineffectual against him. His skin is so hard that their attacks do nothing, and Ramrod grabs the papers and flees. Daredevil and Black Widow give chase, telling Peter Parker to stay where he is, but of course he's not going to do that, he's Spider-Man. As Ramrod hides from the heroes, we learn that he worked on an oil rig and would push his employees hard until some barrels of oil fell on top of him and broke every bone in his body. He woke up in a strange place and was told by some mysterious people that they have replaced all his bones with steel and injected him with a poison. And to get the antidote, he has to kill Daredevil. But for some reason, he's focused on getting the papers first. Those papers are quickly webbed away from him by Spider-Man, and as Ramrod chases Spidey down, Daredevil and Black Widow swing in to stop the villain. They're able to hold the villain off better now that they realise that his face is his weakness, but Ramrod is able to knock Black Widow off the roof of the building, and Daredevil leaps down to save her. So it's only Spidey and Ramrod left. We also learn that the papers have a radioactive material inside that Ramrod could sense, so Spider-Man can't even hide the papers away. Instead, our hero swings to a high building nearby. He climbs up, chased by Ramrod digging his hands into the wall to make handholds. When they reach the top, Spidey webs Ramrod up while Daredevil and Black Widow return to deliver some final blows. Seeing Black Widow alive is too much for Ramrod, who lets go of the wall and falls down and into the pavement below. As Spidey swings away, Daredevil and Black Widow wonder why he was even there in San Francisco before Peter Parker shows up, hoping that they still have time for his interview. Spider-Man is angry. He's still grieving the loss of Gwen, and the Daily Bugle is running headlines calling him a murderer, despite there being no evidence. But at the Bugle, Robbie Robertson disagrees with the Bugle's approach and argues with Jonah about the headlines and how irresponsible they are. Their discussion is cut short with the arrival of John Jameson, Jonah's son, who wants to introduce his father to his fiancée. But there's something strange happening with John and the necklace he wears around his neck. Elsewhere, Peter Parker goes to college, something he's been failing to do of late. But all he can do is imagine the thoughts of all the students around him, imagining them judging him, feeling sorry for him, and it just makes him angry enough to snap a pencil, and he storms out. In the corridor, Mary Jane catches up with him, keen to get him to talk, to stop him being a hermit, but Peter snaps at her and at Flash Thompson too, telling them both to leave him alone. That evening, Peter Parker is filled with rage at the world, and specifically rage at Jonah and the Daily Bugle, and he's going to show Jonah what a real threat to society is. But at the same time, across the city, John Jameson stumbles out of his home and transforms into a wolfman, before racing across the city to the Daily Bugle and smashing through the window of Jonah's office, just as Spidey arrives to enact his revenge. And because he's a hero and slightly relieved to have something to hit, Spider-Man swings in to defend rather than attack Jonah. He knocks the Wolfman around, dodges, swipes, but eventually he tumbles back and hits his head on the ground. As Spidey lays dazed, Jonah races to the phone to call for help, but the Wolfman grabs his wrist. When Jonah asks why he chose him, he notices a familiar necklace on the Wolfman and sees something in its eyes, a plea for help. The Wolfman dives back out of the window as Spider-Man comes to, and Jonah blocks the hero from giving chase. He doesn't explain why to Spidey, but we learn the truth from his thoughts, that he knows that the Wolfman is his son. With his anger gone, after he worked out a lot of it fighting the Wolfman, Spidey watches the city from the rooftops. He's just about to swing home when his spider sense goes off and he's not sure why. It's early morning, all the muggers are in bed, but he doesn't see the Wolfman leaping at him, angry about the earlier fight, until it's too late. Peter Parker is brooding on a dock. He'd hoped that going to San Francisco would get his mind off Gwen, but it hasn't helped. When a drunk sailor tries to give him life advice, Peter swings away behind his back, leaving the sailor as the sole witness of a meteor crashing into the river. When a man emerges from the water, the sailor reaches out to help him onto the dock, but is instantly turned to stone, because the man emerging from the river is the grey gargoyle. Hoping to get out of his slump by beating some people up, Peter swings around as Spider-Man, hoping to find a crime to stop. And he finds one in the form of some AIM agents who flee when he arrives and eventually lead him to a building where a different AIM agent is in the middle of being thrown out of a window. The thrower is Captain America, and Spidey teams up with Cap to easily dispatch the remaining villains and then waits on the rooftop as Captain America calls it in to S.H.I.E.L.D. After a light blinds him, Spider-Man finds himself teleported to a S.H.I.E.L.D. airship, and after they fail to arrest him for murder, S.H.I.E.L.D., or more accurately Nick Fury, invites Spidey on their next mission. Captain America has been protecting a missile guidance system, but a different system was stolen at the same time, and our heroes need to recover it. Spider-Man agrees to help, but mostly because Nick Fury calls him a chicken. Meanwhile and elsewhere, we learn that the Grey Gargoyle, with a different spelling of grey this time, is leading AIM. We also learn that Captain America sent him into space the last time they fought, but he communicated with AIM from space, and they shot his rocket and sent it hurtling back to Earth. And now he has a rocket guidance system. He's going to be able to send a satellite up into the sky and turn half the world into stone. But not if Captain America and Spider-Man can help it. Cap leads with his shield and Spidey sprays webbing, but his webbing is quickly turned to stone, and so he focuses on the AIM henchmen instead. As Cap fights the gargoyle, an electricity wire comes loose and zaps our hero, knocking him down, which distracts Spider-Man long enough for him to get knocked down too, and the Grey Gargoyle turns them both to stone. The villain then ties them to a rocket, and since their petrification won't wear off for another hour, he has plenty of time to launch them into space along with his satellite. But with Cap's super strength and Spider-Man's powers, they recover a lot quicker than expected, break out of their chains and race to stop the villain from launching the rocket. But in the fight, a chain gets loose, wraps around the gargoyle's legs, and the rocket launches with the villain attached, and he is pulled into space once more. And so Spider-Man waves goodbye to Captain America, keen to get some rest. Thanks for watching, and thanks to my patrons listed here for supporting the channel. If you'd like to watch these videos early or to get your name in the credits, consider signing up. I'll see you all for the final part of 1973, where a Wolfman is defeated, a new Vulture arrives on the scene, and the Avengers fight Dormammu.